Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 101. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. And Dave, how you doing? And just please don't post any of the DMs I sent you from years ago about how much I looked up to you. Just if we could just have that out of the way, then it would make me feel a whole lot better.
Yeah, as long as you and Matthew don't post screenshots of the ones of me telling you how much I love you, and then of course the other ones where I'm
less loving.
Yeah, very very less loving at the both of you. Please leave those off the internet. Boy, that seems to be the thing to do right now, huh? Is post screenshots of direct messages and take shots at. I'm not above taking shots at other people, but Antonio Brown, boy, he's no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler, but here we are still talking about him, and a little bit about Juju as well too, because Antonio Brown sure turned the table. I wouldn't say turn tables, but just inexplicably went after Juju on social media the last few days.
He did, and for Steeler fans tired of the topic, don't worry, we will not discuss it very long, but we have to talk about it because it is just something that comes back up in the news cycle. And, I mean, of all the decisions that AB's made, this one is probably the most baffling, and that's some tough competition. But to take the shot at Juju, who, as you said, has done nothing wrong to the guy, has always praised him, supported him, even as recently as I think last week said, that's still my guy. There's no hard feelings between us. It is what it is, and I'm happy he got his contract in Oakland. I mean, you're just picking the wrong battle there because you're not going to win that one, and clearly the pushback has been all against AB.
Yeah, and to bring everybody up to speed, if you don't spend hours and hours on social media, and if you don't do that, God bless you. You probably have a more positive outlook on life than most. But it pretty much started with Antonio saying something to the line of leave your emotions off social media, and then somebody fired back at him a picture of Juju. I guess from Steelers.com, the announcement that Juju had won the team MVP award, and then Antonio fired back that, look, that's the kid that fumbled away the postseason last year. Just a really uncalled for shot against Juju. Juju made sure to kind of clap back a couple times with a couple of tweets. Say, look, I've been nothing but in your camp. I don't have the exact words here, and I don't think it really matters at this point. But then Juju, I think, subtweeted Antonio a couple of times there, and then it was on, and that happened over the weekend. So of course you knew every one of those major media sports talk shows were going to take a stab at that, and I think pretty much all of them did. They pretty much all painted Antonio Brown in the bad light, Juju as the kind of the victim, if you will, and I don't know what you're thinking if you're Mike Mayock and John Gruden at this point. I mean, you had to know to some degree what you were getting into, but man, you see NFL players around the league like Eric Weddle and who was the other one?
Justin Reed had a real strong comment.
I mean, for such a young player, Justin Reed, and I think there's been a few more since as well too. This is a guy that around the league has lost. I don't know how much respect he had. I mean, as a player, obviously, tons of respect as a player. How can you not? But as far as a human being and just a guy off the field, this is a guy that I don't think. I mean, even if you're a new teammate of Antonio Brown's in the Oakland locker room, you have to be wondering what you can say and confide in him at this point, and how much of a how good of a teammate that you have on your hands there, and is this guy really just all about himself and nothing else? So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in Oakland. And once again, don't want to take anything away from Antonio Brown as a player, because I've run out of superlatives to use and adjectives to use to describe the kind of things that he has done and probably will continue to do on the football field. But at some point, that me attitude's going to run its course no matter how good a player you are. And, boy, I sure am glad. We might look back at this trade of, Kevin Colbert only getting a third and a fifth for Antonio Brown and being the trade of the century, if you will, for the Steelers. And, I think one thing that continues to reconfirm here is I think people are starting to see why the Steelers were only able to get a third and a fifth, and at this point still, I think people should be applauding that Kevin Colbert was able to get the extra fifth as part of that deal there, because this guy, boy, I know basket cases when I see him, Alex, and this guy is right there.
If you're his teammate now in Oakland, you're wondering, when's he coming for me when I make a mistake? Am I going to be in the crossfire? So yeah, I mean, to put all the blame on Juju for the whole, in his words, AB's words, for why the Steelers missed out on the postseason when you were a 7-2-1 team in control of everything, and they'll blame it all on one guy is just ludicrous. And as you've posted before, AB's had these problems too. What was it, 2012, 2013 against Dallas, fumbling a punt return with 10 minutes left, Steelers up 7, ended up losing that game in overtime. So AB's been in those shoes before. He's fumbled at a higher rate. I think Cowboys account randomly had the stats. So to put all the blame on Juju for that, and we know how distraught and upset Juju was at himself after that Saints game, and he came out and took responsibility and said it was all his fault, and clearly it wasn't. But he was just torn up about that, and to take that shot at him at a really sensitive moment, I mean, it's just shows the immaturity that AB has as a near 31-year-old, and that's just remarkable.
Yeah, and I thought Rich Eisen did perhaps the best job out of everybody. The talking heads, a real kind of fair and balanced, look at both sides of the situation here. And he, in so many words, Rich Eisen said, look, Juju technically wasn't the one that lost. Sure, they needed that game against the Saints, and it obviously would have helped there. But losing that game, the Steelers were not out of it at that point. Now, they did have to beat Cincinnati in the final week, and they did need some help there from a Cleveland team that obviously people thought that there was a chance there because of the way they were playing. But, they technically weren't out of it, but part of that equation at that point was that they had to beat Cincinnati, and then Antonio Brown decides to go AWOL that week. So look, was that fumble huge against the Saints? Sure. But even if he doesn't fumble, is it guaranteed that the Steelers go in and get a score then at that point? No, nothing's guaranteed at that point. Sure, the odds probably are more in your favor if you don't fumble in that situation there than not. But I mean, it was a costly fumble. It was not the primary reason. You go back to several games throughout this season that Steelers team should have won. The game against Oakland and the game against Denver, those kind of games, letting those games get away from you sure didn't help the whole situation. So it is like it or not, it's still a team collective effort there why they did not make the playoffs last year. And, Antonio Brown has since deleted that Instagram post. I wonder if Gruden or Mike Mayock called him and said, hey, dude, get that off there. You're only making yourself look bad there, but, the damage is done there. And I don't think we're done with it. Antonio Brown is just one of those guys that I think, he just goes off the rails, especially on social media. And my only hope now at this point is, where do I have to sign up and how much money do I have to pay to get the Raiders on Hard Knocks this year?
Yeah, that would be some must-see TV. So, yeah, for me, it's all about the response after the Saints game. Juju made the mistake and the game ended off that fumble, but he showed up the next week. He worked and tried to help his team win because they were mathematically alive. And AB quit on the team and went home. And that's what it comes down to, how you respond to that difficult moment and being put in that adversity. AB went home and Juju showed up and played and did his best. So, I don't know what's going on with AB. I thought Nate Burleson put it well, too, that he largely supported AB. And even I have, to some extent, supported AB. I mean, he wants to do his own thing. He wants out of Pittsburgh. Fine by me. He gets paid. Hey, I'm all for players getting paid. But to do this stuff and think that he's making the right moves, I'm not sure what advice he's getting. I don't know what his game plan here is, but it ain't working.
You just got to think all this stuff's going to come. I mean, he's heading down the road of getting ready to self-destruct. I mean, this guy is a volatile guy, and I know maybe that plays into an advantage for him as far as motivation and work off the field that translates into good production off the field. But I mean, this thing at some point is going to reach a boiling point with him, and it's probably not going to. Not going to be a pretty sight there. Now, another thing I think that Rich Eisen covered as well too is, you'd be foolish not to think that you're going to miss what AB provides you. Some of those plays in the production. Now it's up to, but that kind of stuff can be. Who was it? Jeff Schwartz. That's his last name, right? Schwartz, the former offensive.
The lineman. Yep.
Right. He had a nice video yesterday as well too that he sent me, and talking about the whole AB and Juju thing, and he said, the Steelers are going to miss the production of Antonio Brown, but that kind of stuff can be pieced together and replaced to some degree. Now, are you gonna replace it 100%? Probably not. But some of that can be replaced, and not by just one player, by a combination of players. So it's up to the Steelers coaches to try to do that. And by having him out of that locker room, along with potentially Le'Veon Bell distraction, or obviously him being gone now, and the distraction he could have created gone now, this could be an addition by subtraction thing in both situations here, and it'll be interesting to see play out. And another thing that I'm kind of thankful, I guess, at this point is Ben Roethlisberger has stayed quiet throughout this whole thing. I think that has helped him out tremendously through this whole thing. And my only wish now is guys like Juju and the rest of the Steelers teammates just ignore the rest of the Antonio Brown stuff now. Antonio Brown's already painted himself in a poor enough light and corner now. Just let him make his comments and don't fire back, and let that be the Raiders' problem, not the Steelers' problem.
Yep, I totally agree. I think everything that's been said needs to be said, has been said, and you don't have to take it any further and create any more. I'm sure Ben will get asked about it at some point. I think he'll be pretty dismissive and pretty deflecting of the whole situation. But yeah, I mean, clearly Juju's done nothing wrong here, and AB's tactics have been bizarre and ineffective, and that's been proven. I don't know if anyone's defending what AB's doing right now. So let's also ignore it too and move on from it, because AB's not a Steeler anymore, and it's ultimately an irrelevant story. And let's focus on some of the moves this team has made, because they've been pretty busy since we last talked, Dave, signing three. I think it's three. I'm not sure when last time we talked and went over these AAF players, but yesterday they announced the signing of three of them. Cornerback Cameron Kelly, linebacker J.T. Jones, and defensive tackle Winston Craig. Of those three, I think Kelly's the most interesting name. A guy that I thought had some decent tape at San Diego State and has played even a little bit of receiver, and he's played corner, he's played safety. I think will be a safety for Pittsburgh. They announced him as a corner, so we'll see. But a guy that played pretty well in the AAF.
Yeah, and go ahead and catch people up on the other two, on Tacho and in case they're lagging behind. Who were the?
I couldn't remember. Did we talk? I couldn't remember if we talked about that.
I don't remember if we did or not.
Yeah, the other two though were the Iron center J.C. Hassenauer. I believe I'm probably saying that incorrectly, but the center from Alabama, and then Jack Tocho from NC State, who started as a corner and probably going to play safety as well. Two guys from the Iron, which was the Steelers affiliate of the league.
Obviously, the offensive lineman has some versatility to him, but he wasn't a starter there. I think he was more of a reserve guy overall, but he showed some decent stuff, I think, there in the AAF, and it's got him a job now in training camp. They obviously need some depth and numbers at that position. We'll see how long he's able to stick there. I think you did kind of a breakdown on Tacho. What'd you find?
Yeah, just a guy that's high character, pretty, a decently productive career for the Wolfpack. Again, was a corner in college and drafted by the Vikings in the 7th round in 2017, I believe, and moved to safety. Spent a couple years in Minnesota before getting released this past year. Actually, and it was funny. You kind of do some research on these guys. You go through the Steelers Depot archives. The Steelers brought him in for a workout, I think, back in 2017 when he was on the street. So that it's always about the guys you kind of have notes on from a couple of years ago. You bring them in for a workout, they don't sign, but they become available again, and you kind of piece everything together. So a guy that this team has has some level of familiarity with. But yeah, he'll probably play safety for Pittsburgh.
I tell you what's fun is, we write up some of these guys and then you forget and you look back and I look down and you had written on Cameron Kelly, you had done a profile on him. Yeah. So that's, I think, the benefit. Some people say, man, you guys do way too many of these profiles. Well, our goal every year is to do roughly about 150 to 200 of them, and our kind of our long range goal is to have all the Steelers draft picks, profiles done on them by the time their name's called. Now, we've come very, very close, I think, to that a few times, missing a player here and there, and I think have even had some of the undrafted players done as well, too, there. So, look, what we try to do is we try to educate not only ourselves but readers of the site to as many players as we possibly can throughout this process, not only the bigger name guys, but the guys that the Steelers are most likely to have interest in there because, look, I mean, everybody wins in doing that. What else are we going to do? Throughout this time of the offseason there. But I think, as you said, with Kelly, you got a guy that's versatile, that's played safety, that's played corner. He had just as in his limited time in the AAF, he had 4 interceptions. 3 came in one game. It looked like once he got switched back from wide receiver to cornerback, or to the defensive side of the ball in I think it was week 3 there, he mostly played cornerback, it looks like. And it looks like where his interceptions came from. Made some very nice plays on the football in those highlights, if you will. You look at his measurables though, and you think, my Lord, what did he run, like a 4.6 or something?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what he ran, but he didn't run fast. And he may play corner, but I've always pegged him as a guy that played safety. He played safety his first 3 years at San Diego State. He moved to corner his senior year, kind of like what Sean Davis did. And I think going back to safety is going to be the most natural thing for him, but maybe he stays at corner. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that attracted him maybe to the Steelers right now is him, making plays. And Kevin Colbert has talked about we need some people that can take the football away. And there was one thing that Kelly did, in that brief time in the AAF was take the football away. So maybe that move from wide receiver back to defensive back was a blessing for him. At least it's got him a job for now. We'll see how long he's able to keep it. I think J.T. Jones is also another kind of an interesting guy. I mean, the Steelers obviously needed some bodies at that outside linebacker position, and yes, we know J.T. Jones was listed as a defensive end with the Atlanta Legends, but I mean, you look at his measurables and you look at what he did in college and all at Miami of Ohio. This guy is an outside linebacker, so interesting guy on the limited amount of tape that I've seen. So look, I mean, definitely, any of these guys signed at this time of the year are huge long shots, but you hate to use the word camp bodies. We've seen guys in the past, Mike Hilton and Roosevelt Nix, and we could probably go down the list of guys that have been able to, the Jordan Dangerfields and whatnot,
Villanueva was a futures long shot.
Right, Villanueva. I mean, try to learn as much as you can about these guys right now, so you know what you're dealing with when you get into the training camp and the preseason. Then let the process work out from there. So understandable why these 5 guys. I don't know too much about the defensive linemen that they signed, but a little bit undersized there. I think he had 2.5 sacks there in the AAF. Another kind of help fill out the end of the numbers category of the defensive line. He looks like a 3-4-5 tech, if you will. Don't know too much about him, and obviously don't know too much about the kid out of Alabama, the backup that's probably going to play some center and guard.
One last note, there was a report the team was going to sign defensive end Casey Sills. That name sounds familiar. It should. He was in camp as a third-team lefty end last year. It has not been announced by the team, though, so there was a physical. Of course, all these guys have to pass physicals, so I don't know if there was an injury issue or it just hasn't been announced yet, but that is possible as well, and he played in the AAF and played relatively well. And just to be clear, I get this question asked a lot of me on Twitter. These moves have no bearing on draft plans. This is filling out a 90-man roster, getting guys in that can compete. It's not going to change your draft strategy one bit.
Yeah, exactly. Who was the other one that was supposed to come in for the
Graham.
And they haven't signed him yet, right?
Yeah, well, he had that neck issue, and I said
Right.
it before, neck injury in March. I don't think he's passing the physical, and I'm guessing that was the hang-up.
Yeah, he told me he thought he was over it. So
well, they all say they're over it when they're going to try to sign with an NFL team.
Right, I'm fully healthy now, but yeah, I mean, obviously they don't just put you on IR in any league for no reason at all. So probably something didn't match up there, and maybe that happened with Casey Sills as well. And yeah, you're right. Look, none of what happens right now impacts the draft at all, and it's not going to be surprising. I think I'm trying to think what the roster number is right now. I think they had 70. I think that maybe they're at 75 right now. Does that sound right? I think they were at 70 before any of these AAF kids were signed. So I think that's 5. I think maybe that puts them at 75 right now, which is a little. I mean, that's a little when you look at scheduled draft picks. Plus, they normally like to sign 10 undrafted free agents. So I would still. I mean, you're looking at somebody's going to probably have to go here pretty soon, and obviously that kind of stuff wouldn't happen until after the draft. But I think their actual roster number of 75 is a little bit higher than it normally is this time of year.
Yeah, and just with the opportunity of the AAF, and they haven't brought in a lot of late-round guys for pre-draft visits the way they did last year. So, yeah, we'll see what the strategy is, and maybe they're anticipating making some big moves in the draft with some trade-ups. And I guess that's a good segue into the draft, although one last quick note on Casey Sills. Just to be clear, they didn't announce a Sills signing last year at all, and it took them months to put on the roster, so maybe there's some Casey Sills grudge there, but we'll wait and see if that gets announced or not. But
it's not on the official sheet. It's not on the league sheet yet, so we'll see if it's there today.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you'll keep us posted on that. But to go to the draft now, a good segue into that with the pre-draft visitors. I think there's about a week left for pre-draft guys to come in. Steelers have 21 of the allotted 30 reported, not counting the local guys. And really, it's been pretty much heavy on the cornerbacks this past week, Dave. You got, Sean Bunting and Justin Lane, Rockyason, Byron Murphy, Deandre Baker have all come in for visits over the last couple days. And so Steelers are starting to fill out the pre-draft visit guys, and then of course to see Murphy and Baker, potential first-round picks, come in. They weren't at Colbert and Tomlin were not at the pro days, but see them come in for visits is definitely notable.
Yeah, it's notable, but I mean, look, we've seen some. I don't know how much of this is just due diligence on them. I'll still be shocked if Baker's the pick. When you talk about the whole Kevin Colbert and pro day thing, even throwing all that out, I could see them drafting Murphy before I could Baker. And look, Baker's got some good tape. To me, what I know about him and him being a little bit older, and how are you going to get some of these guys on the field during the rookie season anyway?
Right. Yeah, that's going to be a tough part. Especially Murphy, you could, if you want to play him inside, based on what happens with Hilton. But Baker is going to be a tougher task.
Now you can see a guy a little bit, a guy like Bunting or maybe, or Justin Lane a couple rounds later where you don't have as much invested. I don't know. Maybe we're reading too much into it. Obviously, Kevin Colbert subscribes to the theory that you don't pass on good players. So, sometimes we look at this, well, how are you going to get this guy playing time? I don't think Kevin Colbert really worries too much about that. I think he wants good players, and then you throw them into the mix, and then you see what comes out of it. So I think it's our own kind of bias, and I'll admit, it's a bias against the Steelers and their ability to evaluate corners first and foremost that has me the most concerned when it comes to getting a guy like Baker or Murphy. And I keep going back to, not that it's a big deal with measurables or anything, but I think when you go back and you look at corners over the years that have been drafted in the first round, a lot of those guys have 40 times, most of those guys have 40 times under 4.5. And both Baker and Murphy can't say that, So now, yeah, you're supposed to let their tape do the talking and all like that. I mean, who's the most NFL ready between Baker and Murphy?
Ooh, that's tough. I think they're both fairly ready. I mean, I think I would lean Baker because he's the senior. He's 24. Murphy's a redshirt sophomore with a lot less experience. Baker's very battle tested in the SEC. So I'd say Baker, but I think Murphy's pretty mature for where he's at in his football career.
Yeah, and I'm still not 100% sure we have a right birthday on Baker. I've seen like 3 different birthdays for him. Rocky Sin is a guy that people keep trying to put in that first, second round territory. I don't know. We'll see. But they have brought him in. Justin Lane and Bunting. Those 2 guys could be more the flavor that we see. Ugo Amade is an interesting guy just because he's so position flexible. I mean, I really think that's more of a safety than anything. Would you agree with Ugo Amade?
I've gone back and forth. He wore a lot of hats at Oregon. I think he's probably going to end up fitting in the slot, but because I think he's even undersized to play free safety. But I don't know where his best position's at.
Right.
That's the vibe. I'll report on him for Wednesday.
How do we? And you have you're doing and it's a good time, I guess, to segue into the annual what the Steelers look for kind of reports. Anything else first stick out to you about some of these recent pre-draft visitors here? I mean, are you shocked that Murphy and Baker are brought in? And also, I think we already knew that Ben Banagou from TCU, a guy that I really like, another guy that's a little bit older, another guy that doesn't have a ton of bend, a guy whose tape looks good. I think one of the things that people worry about with Banagou, and I can understand this, and this probably can be applied to Cleveland Farrell as well too, is what happens if these 2 guys can't win on the inside?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. To answer your question about anything that surprises me, no, not really. And I'm happy that Murphy and Baker came in. I think they've been, I think the Georgia Day, I think that they were somewhere else, so they couldn't go to that. Keith Butler was at the Georgia Pro Day, though, and they sent Terrell Austin to the Washington Pro Day. And I know he met with Taylor Rapp and probably met with Byron Murphy as well. So I'm glad those guys are coming in. And you're right. While it would be tough to figure out how they're going to get someone like Murphy and especially someone like Baker on the field year one, given the poor track record of drafting corners, if you have a good corner in your lap, you take him if you think he is that guy, and you try to rectify that issue of drafting corners. So I guess that's kind of a good issue to have. But yeah, nothing super surprising. Some really interesting names on that list though.
All right, let's. Where do we need to go from here?
Well, I guess you were talking about the studies that I did, and let's see, Monday I did the inside linebackers, so let me pull that one up first. But yeah, if you're not familiar with it, 4 years now, we've just kind of, just one piece of the puzzle. It's not the say all end all. I'm not, I don't hold myself to it 100%, but looking at Steelers' past draft history and the types of players and the measurables that they've drafted, how does that translate to the current group of prospects and who kind of fits really well and also who doesn't fit well, who misses a lot of these benchmarks that we look at, because every team has benchmarks athletically, measurably, guys that are just, not fast enough, not big enough, and there's a fire whistle going off in the background. But anyway, I have 6 names that fit for the inside linebackers. You can check it out on Steelers Depot, but of course we see some names like Devin White from LSU, and I thought one interesting name was Drew Tranquill from Notre Dame. But did you read that post, Dave? Did you see anything that kind of stuck out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I wasn't surprised to see some of the names on there. Why don't you read the ones that matched and the ones that were just outside?
Yeah, the 6 names that matched. Now, some of these are day 3 guys. Dakota Allen from Texas Tech, Cody Barton from Utah, Emeka Egbule from Houston, Jordan Jones from Kentucky, Drew Tranquill from Notre Dame, Devin White from LSU, and the ones that missed by just one category, Otera Alaka from Texas A&M, Ben Burr-Kirven from Washington, Devin Bush from Michigan, Terez Hall from Missouri, Bobby Okereke from Stanford, Jermaine Pratt from NC State, Cameron Smith from USC, and Ty Summers from TCU. So obviously they like Bush. They brought in Burr-Kirven for a visit. They've got reported interest in Alaka, so things kind of match up pretty well.
How far off was the Texas linebacker in this?
Gary Johnson missed by, I think, quite a bit, actually. But, we're not beholden to some of this stuff. We know that they've looked at smaller guys, shorter guys. So, that's not going to be disqualifying the way that it might have been before. Let me look on Johnson.
Now, another thing while you're looking that up, I wonder how far you've done this for a few years now. How far do you see the goalpost moving each year? Because obviously the larger the sample size that you get, I mean, every year you grow by maybe one guy at a position. So how you understand what I'm saying? How much does the goalpost move in certain measurable categories each year?
It's not a lot. Maybe one category will change a little bit. I mean, the Steelers haven't drafted an inside linebacker since Matakevich in 2016, so this position has stayed pretty static. Actually, Gary Johnson didn't miss in much. He just missed in the height and the bench, so he's not too far off. We know that height probably is not going to matter this year for these guys.
Maybe not. So he is one. Has he been brought in yet, or was he supposed to be brought in? Do you remember?
Yes, he was brought in on the 4th.
Okay, all right. So I mean, there's obviously some interest there, but yeah, I mean, look, make no mistake about it. When I do my final mock draft, I try to take all the different clues that we think we have and signs, and I use these lists that you built over the years as well too, because I think history has kind of shown that it's guys either right in that catch zone or just outside of it that you have posted in the past there. So I always enjoy these, and I think next up is the one that we're really going to have a good conversation about, and I'm glad you had it done prior to this show, and that's wide receiver.
Yep. Did the same thing for receiver, where there's even more data on. And again, I think we're looking at 6 receivers that checked every single box and several more that came close. I'll read the list of the ones that checked every single box. Miles Boykin from Notre Dame, Ashton Doolin from Malone, B.C. Johnson from Colorado State, Stanley Morgan from Nebraska, Darius Slayton from Auburn, and your man, David Sills V from West Virginia. So
why do all these guys get put on my guy?
Because you've been talking about David Sills for 72 hours.
Yeah. Well,
I've been fawning over him.
This might come as a surprise, but I like trolling some of my people on social media. But look, I mean, this all goes back to, and not so much my guy. I'm going to research the heck out of a guy that I think checks a lot of the Steelers' boxes. I mean, people say, "Well, Dave, why don't you talk more about the guys that you want?" Or and I think we had a question like that on both of us. We're asked that on Twitter. I think even our buddy Spencer, right? That asked us.
I think so.
More about guys that we like, or mock drafts about guys that we like. Why the heck do any of you guys care people Alex and I like for the Steelers? I mean, I get it, I understand it, but it's why even go that route? Because guys that we like, the Steelers might, probably half of them they don't like. I mean, here's what I try to do. From the time the season ends, I try to learn as much as I can about as many draft eligible guys as I can, and I try to match them to what I think the Steelers will get. Because I can research some of these guys till the cows come home, but the likelihood that they're going to end up being with the Steelers is slim and none. And to me, that's not a good use of time. I mean, even if I'm able to say, look, I would have drafted this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and 5 years down the road, all 5 of those guys hit, do I get a kind of a reward for that? I mean, look, I'm not going to be the general manager of the Steelers. I'm not, I have no desire to do that. I'm not going to be a scout for the Steelers. So I think the biggest thing of what Alex and I try to do is try to learn about these guys as many as we can, and then try to match up as to what we think the Steelers will do. Because if we match up those and a few of them end up right, that's a little bit less homework we have to do after the draft when it comes to learning about some of these guys as well too. So I just want to kind of put that out there that I personally try to learn more about guys I think the Steelers might like more than I do guys I don't think the Steelers will like.
I think you stated that really well, Dave, but I'm going to ignore that and completely and ask you, who do you like more between Sills versus Boykin?
I like Sills just from the accomplishment standpoint. Now,
Mm.
was I surprised? Was I surprised that Sills and Boykin were both right in the wheelhouse of your list? Absolutely not. I mean, generally, when we find out that or think that we know that the Steelers have interest in a few of these guys, they usually end up right in the wheelhouse on some of these studies that you do. So I was surprised zero that both those guys were in here. Now, how much of that contextualization? Well, I mean, I've done contextualizations on both these guys, right? On their 2018 targets on both Boykin and Sills. Both of them are bona fide X receivers, correct?
Yeah, I think you can argue that. Yep.
Really, I don't see how you can argue against it. I really think they are. Now, Sills is the more polished, I think, of the two, and that not by a lot, because people got to remember that Sills, boy, what a great, you want to talk about guys that have fantastic backstories. I don't know how, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are WVU fans, so they probably already know a lot of it, but this is a kid that I think at like 13 was recruited at recruited to be a quarterback at USC.
Given a scholarship, even.
Yeah, scholarship under Kiffin. And, if not for a hand injury, and look, he got recruited at WVU, and, it didn't take him long to kind of think that maybe he deserved, probably needed to play wide receiver, and that he didn't want to give up his dream. So after, the 2015 season, he went to a junior college to try quarterback one last time. That didn't work out, and lucky, good for him that he was able to swallow his pride and say, look, the whole idea of this thing is to play at the next level, at the NFL level. So I think Dana had told him before he left that, look, if you want to, doors open, you want to come back and play some wide receiver, because for first and foremost, nobody in the West Virginia secondary could cover him. As the story goes. Well, anyway, long story short, his dream as a quarterback got crushed at a junior college. He came back and played junior and senior year at WVU and really put up some good consistent numbers both of those years. He is a guy that played mostly the X position, a guy that on tape, he's not going to win any 4x, what do they call those, 4x100 or 100 yard meter, whatever, 100 meter races or whatnot, but he's got some sneaky speed on him. He runs the complete route tree. I like the way he plucks the ball out of the air. He'll combative catch for you. Huge red zone threat. He can stretch. He can not only give you the underneath stuff, he can stack defenders, and they are the same defenders that James Washington was able to stack in that conference as well too. So read into it what you can. But he did everything that you would probably want him to do, except have the elite separation. Blow by guys. Now he was a guy that I think that, and I think you'll see this on tape, that will kind of separate with the ball in the air at the tail end of the route. So there is that. He tracks the ball well, the deep ball well. He did have his some drops, some ones that he definitely should have caught there over the last two seasons. But top to bottom, character to measurables to play on the field, this is a guy that you have to know that the Steelers like. And so when you go back and you see the report from Tony Pauline that says the Steelers really like this guy, it's not hard to envision why. And I think they like him enough that we're talking third to fourth round with this guy. And I kind of troll because I know when people look at this guy and see his skin color and they see the 40 time that he posted, they're going to immediately, and I know a lot of them already they're immediately going to turn their noses up at him. But I think him, and now Boykin obviously quicker of the two there, and Boykin has shown a little bit better, I think, separation at the top of the routes when David Sills. But these guys have a lot of similarities. I think Boykin has the higher upside of the two, or the higher ceiling, because just so raw. But long and short of it is, I think if the Steelers choose a wide receiver in this draft, especially one that plays the X, it's going to be David Sills or Miles Boykin.
I agree. And quickly, Dave, I totally forgot to mention this at the start of the show, so I'll mention it right now. We do have Dave T on for Friday's show with the Terrible Podcast. I know Dave T's definitely a fan favorite, given his opinion on the draft. No better person, I think, to talk to than him. So that'll be for Friday's show. So I just want to give the heads up there and make sure we're plugging that as much as possible. But to go back to Boykin and Sills, yeah, I mean, I think what it comes down to, and it's super interesting, is production versus projection. And Sills has the production. He's a dude that found the end zone probably as much as anybody in this class, and a guy that just has done it before time and time again. While Boykin's a 1-year guy that just came onto the scene really late, and it's what's your flavor? The guy that's proven it, or the guy that you think can do it? And then I think Boykin is the better athlete, tested better. I think has, as you said, much higher upside. But Sills is the guy that's found the end zone, and there's definitely value in guys that have been there and done that before. So that's going to be the argument to be had.
Yeah, I think with Boykin, and from a sheer fact that, you just don't have a lot of tape on him. So, you have obviously more tape, I think, on Sills on what he has done. We just don't know what the limit, I think, is on Boykin just yet, and that's what will make him, I think, attractive, is what he has on tape versus what you maybe project. And you're right, what maybe you project he can do. Now,
yep.
if I think if you look both of these guys, either one of them, if you draft them, I think Sills is a guy that can hit the field quicker for you offensively than Boykin. Now,
I think you're right, yep.
Now, Boykin, probably the better special teams player of the two. In fact, I know that for a fact because David Sills just hasn't been asked to do it. Boykin, I think, has a little bit of background in that already, right?
Maybe, but I wouldn't expect either to do a whole lot in special teams, to be honest with you.
Look, either one of them, I think, is going to have to do some aspect of it if they're drafted by the Steelers.
Maybe. I mean, James Washington didn't really do anything outside of the preseason.
Yeah, I would think. Look, both these guys are not afraid to block, right? Talking about Sills and Boykin. Sills really made some nice catches, some nice adjustment of the body in air. Obviously uses his body real well inside the red zone. Quite a few of those touchdowns of his were those quick slants where defenders just could not get to him. He has a couple of nice corner fades, in there as well too. So, I mean, this is a guy that not only that, he produced long touchdowns as well, too. And I think the initial contextualization that I did on David Sills right out of the chute was his big plays. And that would lead one to initially believe that, so this guy is more of a Z. Well, I mean, if you watch the tape of 2017, 2018, you'll see he lined up in the X more than anything else. And the fact that he was able to create big plays out of the X is encouraging, I think. As was the fact with Boykin, I think, did the same there. Sills is a good third down producer. I forgot to look in preparation for this to go back and look what Boykin did. But and look, I don't want to discount another name you had on your list too that I think really I wasn't overly surprised to see his name on the list, and that's Stanley Morgan out of Nebraska. Now, I think he's a late dog in this race, and I think Dylan Mitchell, one thing I didn't look at Dylan, or I forget what I saw on tape with him. Did he play a lot of the X?
He moved around. He's played slot. He's played outside. I think probably more slot and Z than X, but he's a versatile guy.
Okay, and guys that just barely missed the cut there, I know are guys that people are going to probably ask us about. Paris Campbell played a lot in the slot. Okay,
yeah, he's a big slot guy.
Gary Jennings, look, You watch enough David Sills tape, you're going to see Gary Jennings in there. But and look, a very talented guy from an athletic profile standpoint. But, and I know a lot of people say, well, Tomlin and Colbert were there, and boy, it looked like they were liking Gary Jennings just as much as they were David Sills. That very well may be true, but when you look at what both these guys are, Jennings played a lot in the slot, and he really is a lot more route deficient than a guy like David Sills is. So, look, I mean, if you draft a guy like Gary Jennings, you're probably doing it a little bit later to add some slot competition there. I just think that the eyes were more on David Sills than they were Gary Jennings, because Jennings, I think 80% of his snaps came out of slot, and really I think Paris Campbell was even a higher percentage of slot snaps at Ohio State there too. I love Terry McLaurin, but he just does not have. He's the, who did I compare him to?
TJ Chark.
Yeah, Chark.
Yeah.
Chark. So, I think just not having a lot of tape on him and him having to wear so many hats is going to hurt his stock, at least initially there. Deebo Samuel, we know he's more of an X, but how much of an injury concern is there with him there? I mean, obviously you can see the Steelers having interest in Deebo Samuel. The other guys that made your list, Darius Slayton, I just don't think from a production standpoint, what did he have, like back-to-back, like 30-catch seasons or something like that? The other guys...
He's Sammy Coates 2.0 is Darius Slayton.
Is it? Okay. I know nothing about B.C. Johnson out of CSU and Ashton Doolin out of MU. I know just very little about Darius Slayton out of Auburn.
Yeah, Slayton's a big playmaker, one of the fastest receivers in the draft. Track star, ran 4.39. I mean, this dude's got speed for days, but the hands are inconsistent. Ability to finish the football, finish plays, track the football. There are issues there. He's a Z type. He's a vertical type. I like Darius Slayton to an extent, but certainly not the guy. He'd be a double dip candidate. Be the plan with him. I don't know much about B.C. Johnson or Doolin from Malone. I will maybe profile them before the draft begins. And then Cody Thompson from Toledo just missed out because of the broad jump. And Daryl Drake was at Toledo's pro day. Toledo's got 3 receivers to look at, so that's a name to tuck away. But I just, to go back to Boykin Sills, my last point on this, and then I'll ask you about the Blitnikoff, Dave. If Boykin would have had Will Greer as his quarterback, I mean, just imagine how much better Boykin would have looked. I mean, Sills had a potential first-round quarterback thrown to him, his whole career, basically. Boykin played with just some of the worst quarterback play that you're going to see, and that really hurt him.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how. All we can do is judge by what's on the tape.
Sure.
And yeah, that is a great point. I mean, how much would we have seen out of Boykin had he played? And that's kind of hard. I mean, it is hard, and it isn't hard in the same breath, because there, as we've already mentioned sometimes, that quarterback of Notre Dame sure did underthrow Boykin quite a bit. There. So, look, I mean, you can make strong arguments for either one of these guys, and I think I've seen Boykin go in some mocks much higher than the Sills. But look, don't be surprised if Sills is their guy in, say, the 3rd round. Either one of these guys could be their guy in their 3rd round.
Mm-hmm.
I think the wheelhouse for both of them is 3rd or 4th round, though. People saying, Sills will go much later. Hey, we'll see. We'll see. But I quite honestly, if you watch enough Sills tape, and if you're in the need for an X receiver in this draft, and I don't think people put enough emphasis on the actual positions that these guys play, because not all wide receivers are created equal when it comes to position. I think Sills is maybe the 5th best maybe wide receiver in this draft when it comes to an X wide receiver position.
Wow, I haven't broken it.
And Boykin obviously right there with him.
Yeah, I haven't broken it down. I would take Boykin over Sills. I mean, I could see it go the other way. I think they definitely like both guys, and it wouldn't be surprised at all to see David Sills become a Pittsburgh Steeler. I think Boykin, if you want him, I think you got to get him at least at 83. I think Sills, maybe you could wait until that 4th round. What is that, like 122, whatever the number is? But yeah, I mean, it's super close, and it could definitely go either direction.
I mean, you have to have either one of these guys in your final mock, right? I mean,
If you're going to
unless you go Debo Samuel, maybe, but I don't think they have the interest in him as maybe we would have thought out of the chute.
Yeah, it hasn't been as outward as Sills and Boykin. And with Boykin, I mean, they go to his pro day, they send Colbert there, he works out there, and then they bring him in for a pre-draft visit. And that just tells you how much homework they're doing on Miles Boykin. And partially because he was such an unknown guy, that he had declared early, that he was a one-year guy, kind of showed up on everybody's radar. People thought he was staying in school. So everyone's trying to scramble to figure out who Miles Boykin is. So I think that's one reason why you're seeing so much interest, but it's also legit because this guy can play, and I think has an incredibly high ceiling.
Right, and it's going to be I think it's going to be one of the two, right?
Yeah, I mean that's as good a guess as any, at least. I'll put it that much.
Yeah, I think we'll be surprised if we're not. Now, one other thing I kind of, in an attempt to troll more of my social media people there. Look, the Steelers like some of these awards or whatnot as well too. These college awards. I think if you go back and look at some of these guys they've drafted and either the awards that they've been kind of finalists or semifinalists for. I bet it plays into it, along with the fact of the whole and to reiterate one more time, the boxes that David Sills has checked off. He was a captain at WVU, tremendous backstory, high character kid, overcome adversity. As a type kid, 2 years of similar production with him at WVU. Obviously played at a top school in WVU and played with a quarterback long enough that kind of what you see is what you get. You know exactly what you're buying when it comes to David Sills. A lot of people might not realize this, and I didn't until I started to research this. 2017, 2017-2018 college season. James Washington was the Fred Blitnikoff Award winner for the best wide receiver in the country. Well, David Sills was a finalist, one or two finalists in that, and that surprised me. I was not expecting to see that, because if you go back to a couple of years ago, there were some nice wide receivers, right? That maybe you thought would have been one of the two finalists in there. So I was a bit surprised that Sills was a finalist in there, and I wonder how much that. If you go back and you look, here's another thing that I tried to point out in that chart that I did. That I think you can find this in my Steelers 7 shots post that I put up on Sunday. Here is the round that these past Blitnikoff Award winners and finalists were drafted in, and most of them, and I only went back as far as how far back did I go, Alex? 2008. Most of them were taken within the first 3 rounds, right? I mean, you have the outliers there are D.D. Westbrook a couple years ago was taken in the 4th round. You had Rashard Higgins, who was drafted in the 5th round in 2014. You had Freddie Barnes, who went undrafted in 2009. And there was another Austin Carr went undrafted in 2016. There is in total, and I have to remember that Justin Blackman, I think, was doubled up on this and Ryan Broyles too. How crazy is that? Both those guys were winners and finalists 2 years in a row, back to back in 2010 and 2011 there. But in total, there's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 30 minus 4. Like 26 guys on this list, 26 different guys, and most of them were taken by the 3rd round there. So what does that mean for the chances of David Sills maybe going in the first 3 rounds?
Yeah, absolutely possible. No doubt about it. And then someone like D.D. Westbrook, who went in the 4th, had some character concerns. So maybe there's been some reasons for those outliers. But yeah, but I will say this. Only one Steelers receiver has been drafted off that list, and that was Washington. So I don't know if the correlation there is super strong, if that was just more coincidence or, just the icing on the cake.
Well, and then once again, the whole Senior Bowl thing, that's there. The pro day, Colbert there. Who are they more likely to go to that pro day to see now? Sills or David Long?
I think both. I mean, I don't think you have to choose. I think both guys are attractive to him.
And who are they more likely to go see at the Notre Dame pro day? Boykin or Tillery or Love or all the above?
Yeah, again, I think it's all the above. I think they go to places that have a ton of talent, and both those schools did this year.
So at least we're starting to feel it. If they draft a wide receiver out of West Virginia this year, his name will be David Sills, correct? It won't be Gary Jennings, correct?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be Jennings. I think it'll be Sills.
And if they draft a wide receiver out of Notre Dame, it obviously is going to be Boykin there. So yeah, I think you do a tremendous job when you put together that list. And what position are you doing next?
I have running back done. I just finished the research on edge last night. I'll probably do running back next, though, because that's closer to being done. But we'll go through the main positions, maybe even hit safety this year. There might be enough of a sample size finally with drafting Evans and Allen last year to look at safety. So hopefully we can get to that.
Let me ask you real quick. I hate for you to give a spoiler here, but the running back, did the Kentucky kid make it?
No, unfortunately, because that weight requirement is so strong with the 225 plus, there aren't many guys that fit it perfectly. But if you kind of loosen up that weight requirement, a lot more guys fit. But I'll have that later in the week.
Okay, I was wondering if the Kentucky kid, what's his name?
Spenny Snell.
Right.
Let's see, what did Snell miss? Snell missed the weight, the 40, and the vert, so he's missing a lot of stuff.
I know another thing I was going to ask you about the wide receiver group and all. Refresh my memory. Did Washington made the cut last year in that right or no?
No, he actually didn't. I think he was close. I'll have to go back and look at it. I think he was just off in some of the shuttle drills that knocked him out. I think he missed in 2 categories, but they were just by 5/100ths of a second in the shuttle drill or something like that.
So in other words, I mean, the goalpost is, and you would expect the goalpost to move every year by a little bit, but they're not moving a ton, right?
Yeah, this year for receiver it didn't move because he hit most of the boxes, and again he was just outside of it. So and it's a whole long process, but they didn't change it all this year. But it can always change in the future, and other positions have changed, and usually just by a tiny bit. But no changes for the receiver requirement this year.
And obviously, these studies are not foolproof. Nothing that, as we try to say throughout this entire process, we just try to take past history, some of the clues that we've had in the past, and mesh them all together to try to give us a good idea of some of these guys. And I think even maybe this is a good time to segue into another. I think you had done this since the last show as well too. Was the correlation between Colbert and Tomlin and some of these other members of staff being at these pro days?
Yeah, it's a good point. I totally forgot about that one. I really had a lot of fun researching this one. Let me pull up the article to make sure I get all my facts right. But we know the history between first-round picks and Colbert Tomlin being at the pro day. We know how much that matters, 9 straight years now, and we know the influence there. But it also matters, and our sample size is smaller, unfortunately, but it matters for every draft pick. In the last 2 years, of the 15 draft picks that the Steelers have made, 9 of the 15, Colbert, Tomlin, or both have been at that pro day. And you look at take it one step further and say any kind of high-ranking official, a positional coach, a coordinator, a senior member of the scouting staff, or Colbert Tomlin, if you include those guys into the mix, you have 12 of the 15 draft picks. That's 80%. So, if you want to really, look at beyond the first round and figure out where you want to go in the rest of your draft, look where Tomlin and Colbert go. Of course, looking at first-round guys, but also, a mid-round guy catches their eye, somebody else impresses, and more often than not, they're drafting that player in the mid-rounds, late rounds too.
What was it? What was the total in sample size?
I've only done the last 2 years. That's since we've done our pro day tracker. I haven't gone back any further than that because that might be pretty difficult. But the last 2 years, 9 of the 15 draft picks, Colbert Tomlin's been at that pro day.
Okay, obviously a small sample size there then with just the 2 years. But I mean, it definitely caught my eye.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else. I was going to hit on something else. It just escaped my memory there. But all right, what direction now?
I only have one last note before I think we go to our reader emails, but it's probably the best news that we could possibly share with Ryan Shazier. I'm sure everyone's seen the video by now. If you haven't, go check it out on Steelers Depot. It's on Shazier's Instagram. It's easily accessible, but just showing his rehab in progress and completing, I guess that was his first box jump he's completed, which is, I think, a 3-foot jump, I think Jeremy Fowler said. So that's awesome for him to see the rehab, to see the progression, to be making strides. I'm sure that a lot of people thought were impossible. A lot of doctors thought was highly unlikely to do, and it's just been fantastic to see him, get better and get stronger and get back to his normal self.
Absolutely. Oh, I remember what direction I was going to go. The Senior Bowl. Look, this is something that I write about every year, and we tackle it a little bit. I usually tackle it around All-Star game time, but it goes without saying that the Steelers have a strong correlation between drafting guys from at least the top two, and really the all three of them, if you include the NFLPA Bowl. Obviously, we don't have a long history of that bowl, but when you talk about East-West Shrine Game, you talk about Senior Bowl for non-underclassmen. You can't ignore those lists, right? And especially, not only at all positions, but especially at wide receiver, Alex. If you go back over time. With the with the seniors that qualified, that the Steelers actually drafted at wide receiver, and you look at the list, man. You look at the Mike Wallace, and you look at the the Marcus Wheaton, and I'm gonna forget some, the James Washington, the Lima Swedes. God, go down the list. You can even go back, I think, to if I wanted to win on a technicality here with Lee Mays several years ago. He, believe it or not, and it's funny how these things stick in your mind here. He played in that. Remember that? What do they call that classic?
GM something.
No, it began with an A.
Gridiron. Oh, okay.
Oh no, Gridiron Classic. That's
Gridiron
it.
Classic.
Yeah. That was the old Florida All Stars versus USA All Stars, college All Star game that they had back in the early 2000s.
So I don't remember that because I was like 10. But
right.
I'll take your word for it.
Right. Lee Mays played in that.
Mm-hmm.
So. I think, there's obviously been exceptions to even Antoine Randall. He played in one of these All-Star games as well too. So the correlation not only between Steelers drafting guys that have played in college All-Star games is strong, but it's very strong when you look at the wide receiver position here. So. If they're drafting a wide receiver in the first 4 rounds and he's not an underclassman, i.e. Boykin, he's going to be a guy that played in one of those All-Star games. And when you look at the list and you look at guys that fit kind of the X position, you're pretty much left with David Sills there,
Yeah, he fits great. I would not be shocked in the least to see Sills taken that 83 or that 122. And then also, and this goes hand in hand with what you said, look at the guys at the Combine. It's not too often, especially lately, the Steelers draft non-Combine players. Only one over the last 4 draft classes. That was Keon Adams in 2017 with the 7th round pick. So they like the Combine guys. You get the best workout numbers. You get the best testing, the medical, and all that. So stick with the Combine, stick with the big bowl games, and you'll be on the right track.
Absolutely. And look, we all like trying to look and find for those sleepers, right? Those small school kids. Well, the fact of the matter is, unless the Steelers get them as kind of undrafted free agents, and even then, it's just usually not worth the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at the same time, you probably want to have one non-Power 5 guy in your mock draft too, because it's always how it goes. I think for the last every year since 2009, they've drafted at least one non-Power 5. Now that's still somebody at the Combine, generally still somebody that played in a bowl game, but you don't. As much as we talk about Power 5, they usually have one pick that bucks that trend. But when it was 10 this year, you definitely want to go with at least one outside of the Power 5.
All right. I knew we were set to have that big discussion on the wide receivers, and I think that went pretty well. I want to look a little bit more at what Miles Boykin did, and the good thing is you don't have a lot of tape to have to go through to see that. Mm-hmm. Really, overall with Sills as well too, because he didn't play very much during that 2015 season. They had to kind of twist his arm to give up that red shirt, right?
For Sills?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know his story.
Go back and read it. There's a great story on I think it's SI. Well, two of them actually. I think NFL.com has one on him, and SI has one on him as well too. That really kind of details his path, and it's quite fascinating when you go back and look at all that Sills has been through to get where he's at right now.
Mm-hmm. Can I give you one other quick note to kind of transition here, talking about to linebacker just really quickly, because it just made me think of it with Devin Bush, and we know the Steelers love the bloodlines, they love kind of the backstory and the connections to past Steelers. I was reading a really good article. I can't remember what site it was on, but I'm sure you can research it, about Devin Bush and his father, Devin Bush Sr.
That was on. That was also on NFL.com.
Is that NFL.com?
I think Jim I put that in my 7 shots this past weekend as well too. Yeah, that's a fantastic article. If anybody hasn't read it yet, from Jim Trotter, I think is the one that put that one together.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, thank you for that thing, because I couldn't remember what site it was. But yeah, really, really good article, really detailed the relationship between Bush Sr. and Bush Jr. But the interesting story I took away from that, of the many, was that Devin Bush Sr. played for the Cleveland Browns in 2001, 2002. He played like 8 years in the league as a safety. He was in, I think, Atlanta or St. Louis, or he was somewhere, but he played his last 2 years in the league with Cleveland. And who was the linebackers coach in Cleveland from 01 to 02? Keith Butler. So there's a familiarity there, and Bush actually picked off the Steelers in, I think, 2001, and in a really crappy weather, snowy game, picked off Cordell Stewart on like third down. So we know that last year Colbert talked about Pharrell Edmonds, drafting him when Colbert was a scout for the Miami Dolphins, and drafted him in 85 or 88, whatever year it was. And so I think you see the same kind of connection with Keith Butler and Devin Bush Sr.
Wow, we've already covered a lot. Haven't we?
Yeah.
What else? What else do we have? That it before we get to reader emails here?
Yep, that's all I had. Just the reader emails to finish this out.
Are you ready for Dave T?
I don't know if anyone's ready for Dave T, but I'm super excited for it.
I was trying to fill my wife in a little bit because I had to call Dave. The best way to lock up Dave T for an appearance is to actually get him on the phone. That way, and even that, it's not just a 5-minute call. When you get Dave T has so much information, he wants to give you that information in a set up the interview call. So boy, got some great stories to tell with having him on the show over the years, and we had, like Alex said, we have him scheduled for Friday. Lord willing, nothing goes wrong, he'll be on the Friday show there. So it's time to get into some listener emails, Alex, and we'll start here with Jeff. Writes in, who is the best X receiver in this draft?
Oh, I think somebody just asked that in the comment section on my article. It might be, same person, Jeff. Wow, that's a great question. Man, that's a heavy one. I think Boykin's good at it. I think there's some questions about the separation. I really like Deebo Samuel, though. I go back to that. I know some people profiled him as a slot, even as a Z, but I think as the next guy, as someone that can beat press man, somebody that can separate, can win the top of routes, I think is capable of being the guy. I really like Deebo Samuel. So I know you could mention, Jakeem Butler if you want to put a big guy there, but from the guys that I've really watched closely, I've always been a big fan of Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, Inkel Harry, last year he only lined up, I think, about 25% of the time in the slot. I had to go back and probably do a more detailed look at where actually he lined up at the most. Obviously, Hakeem Butler, what was an X, and as you said, Deebo Samuel. You get past those guys, though. Obviously you have the other kid, not Metcalf, AJ Brown. AJ Brown might be some in that discussion there. The thing with Metcalf here that I don't think a lot of people realize is, and I think this might end up hurting him. Unless you need a guy that you go deep. Go back and look at how they used him. He primarily ran like 3 routes, didn't he?
He's a Z receiver. He's not an X.
He was you go deep He was the 12-yard curl, the deep, and the slot fade, right? I mean, that's pretty much what he did there. But I mean, yeah, I think you hit on him, and I guess my point being, and kind of, once you get past kind of those top three that we mentioned, then I think you're into the Miles Boykin, David Sills category.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's some names we probably have left out. I think Dylan Mitchell beats press coverage really well. He hasn't played a ton of the X, but I think he fits that bill as a later round, fourth round kind of guy. But yeah, you have some options.
And that's the thing. Right before Alex and I got on, we were talking about, man, what a great time of year this is for us, and that we actually wish it was about 3 weeks longer, because now we're actually into the stage of knowing enough about these players that we're going back now to see, all right, was this guy more of an X? Was he more of a slot? Because these are all big things. You can't just classify wide receivers in one position group. And just like with tight ends, how much was this guy used on the inner line of scrimmage? How much was he flexed out? How much was he on the move? Kind of thing. All these things are big aspects of the evaluation process, and we're, at least me, I don't know about you, but I'm finally at the stage now where I'm starting to get more in depth into that, into deeper dives into some of these players. And that's really where I learned the most about these, more about players. And then 2 more weeks the draft takes place, So
yeah. And just keep in mind, as much as we talk about the X position and how important it is, the Steelers also value versatility and the ability to move around and not be static in one spot. And I think they'll even be more so in a year without Antonio Brown. So just, if guys can move around, A.J. Brown, N'Keal Harry, guys that play different spots, Dylan Mitchell, Deebo Samuel, I mean, that's all important too.
All right, from Brett Nile writes in, Brett Nile like the river. He lives in Texas. Dear Dave and Alex, love the show. Which would you rather have? Which would you rather have at the end of the draft? All else equal, no trades. Let me see if I can read it. Devin Bush in the first and Chase Winovich in the second. Or Cleveland Farrell in the first and David Long in the second. I suspect you and Alex will have different opinions. Next question is, why would that be your pick? I will also say that so far tight end and safety have been undervalued in terms of likely pick so far, in my honest opinion. Safety and tight end have immediate opportunities to play day one. The other positions, wide receiver, defensive line, outside linebacker, inside linebacker, corner, all have to jump earlier, higher price relative to the Steelers free agency of last year's starters. Dupree or high picks. Washington shouldn't be talking about these positions more, especially safety at 20. The Devons are gone. Boy, kind of a
lost me there at the end.
Yeah, put a lot in there, Devin. Which would we rather have? Devin Bush, Chase Winovich in the second, or Cleveland Farrell in the first and David Long in the second? Surprisingly, I don't think we're going to be different on this. I mean, I would go Devin. I think my last mock was Devin and Winovich, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree.
And I think you agree. Look, I like Cleveland Farrell. There are questions about him, though, as far as, is he a true? I mean, I think too much emphasis is put on, can this guy drop? Because they're just getting less in Pittsburgh that they're having to do it, right?
Yep, 20% and under last year.
And
Farrell can drop, too.
And Farrell can do it. I think the biggest question about Farrell, as far as being kind of what the Steelers look for at outside linebacker, is a whole bend around the edge thing.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Ben Banigou are two guys that can damn sure win inside. They can win mano a mano, straight up against tackles. They can win going to the inside. The question is at the NFL level, will both those guys be able to win on the edge, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, summed it up perfectly.
And look, I talked a lot about David Long, but I look at David Long. David Long, in my opinion, is not a second-round guy. And if anybody has taken what I've said about David Long and put that into him being a second-round guy. I apologize. I did not make myself clear enough there. I just say from a production standpoint and a tape standpoint, I damn sure might have David Long ahead of a guy like Mack Wilson, but I think the fact remains that, and I think we made a point of pointing that out in the last podcast, is it's the two Devons and then quite a bit of a gap as far as the inside linebacker position goes. Where David Long fits in that, I mean, is he a third-round guy? Is he a fourth-round guy? Yeah, he's got to be up in there somewhere. I mean, I'll be surprised if David Long goes in the 5th round or later.
Yeah, I'm thinking with David Long, like that 83rd overall, maybe 122 or whatever the 4th round pick is, but I think 83 would be the spot you take him.
I mean, I think there's a better chance of Bush and Winovich being 1st and 2nd round picks for the Steelers than perhaps maybe a Cleveland Farrell or David Long. Who knows? I mean, we'll see here. And as far as the rest of this, look, Alex might discount it a little bit more than I do. Tight end, look, I mean, I think, look at the depth chart. Look at the tight end depth chart right now.
Yeah, but it's going to be Fant. I mean, that's the name, right? Noah Fant. Because I don't think Hawkinson, I know I'm going to be that guy, but I don't think Hawkinson's getting to 20.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I haven't had a chance to go look and compare Irv Smith to Fant yet in there, but I still stand by that. I don't think Fant's a bona fide number one guy. And then when you
called him with a second, third round pick.
Yeah, second or third round guy.
So I mean, it's a big guy. That's a big receiver that doesn't block that well. As your number 2 tight end in Pittsburgh, didn't go, no pre-draft visit. I know they sent James Deandre to the pro day, but they didn't send Colbert Tomlin. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Are they going to bring in some more tight ends here?
They're running
out of numbers.
They're running out of numbers, running out of time. So, I mean, they looked at Foster Moreau. What about Trevin Wesco from West Virginia? A big old school blocker, 270-pound dude. That's a perfect number 2 tight end you can get in the 4th round. Yeah,
but I mean, not a guy that you're going to throw to a ton, right?
Probably not, yeah. But is Fant going to be a good blocker? I mean, I think Foster Moreau, Elise Mack from Notre Dame, Wesco from West Virginia seem more likely than Noah Fant in the first. Unless Fant slips at 52, which I don't buy.
If TJ falls, well, we'll get into this here in a minute.
I think it's a lot more interesting of a conversation if Hawkinson were to fall at 20 than if Fant's going to be there, and I think Fant will be there at 20.
All right, from John Cottarelli, writes in, John C. writes in, it's that time of year, draft frenzy escalating. The Steelers have a real opportunity to cash in. It's no draft secret that they have a real need and interest to draft 1 or 2 premier inside linebackers. With that said, they should use this to their advantage with several position of needs, and he goes through all of them here. Deep at several positions, while thin at middle linebacker. An opportunity exists to fill multiple positions. If these 2 Devons middle linebackers are gone at pick 20, if at pick number 20 no dominant talent is present and the next best player could remain a few picks later, why not trade back for? I guess John C is trade back guy. Mm-hmm. Trade back by just a few picks with someone like the Raiders, whom prior trades have established could offer additional talent, more picks to group in, blah, blah, blah. This frenzy expects the Steelers to pick one of the Devon middle linebackers that this may compel another team to grab this position, creating the opportunity for the Steelers to retreat to this alternate plan. I believe this sting could be in play on draft day 1. This could be real interesting. Boy, some of these guys, you think I wear a tinfoil hat. Some of you guys really look, they have 10 choices already. And they, obviously with a couple of 3rd round picks mixed in there, they can do a lot of damage just by holding on to those picks. And it sounds like people want more picks in those early rounds. I'm not going to... Never say never about trading down in the 1st round. To me, there's a more of a chance of the Steelers to trade down this year instead of trade up. But you could say that about any year based on history and Kevin Colbert. That said, how far are you going to trade down? They're not going to trade out of the 1st round, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it hasn't happened in 50 years.
So, I mean, if you trade back, how much are you going to trade back? And what are you going to get in return? Another 3rd?
I'll stick my neck out and say there's a much higher chance they trade up than trade down. I think Colbert will do his typical, well, we can go either way. We'll see what happens. And there's probably some kernel of truth to that, but I don't see the point in trading down. You have 10 picks. Your roster's at 75. You have 4 in the top 83. It's only happened once to Colbert back in 2000. I mean, anything's possible if the board really breaks poorly, but I'll say this. If you're going to trade down at 20 and go to like 25, you're trading back up somewhere because you're not drafting 13 guys. It's not going to happen.
Right. That's part of my point there. Now, if they trade up, I just can't see them giving up that second. So if they trade up, and I think we hit on this on the last show too, it's going to be a first and I don't know, maybe that's 66 to go up and get a guy, maybe Bush.
Yeah.
That would be the most plausible, I think, where we sit here right now, what we think that we know. Chuck Griffin writes in, Dear Dave and Alex, which safety in this class are you targeting in this draft? Is Sean Davis is your long-term plans? Hey, I don't think you go into this thinking Sean Davis is your long-term plans. I don't think you rule out I know Kevin Colbert thinks if he can get a better safety right now, he's going to draft one. Which safety in this class are you targeting in this draft if Sean Davis is not in your long-term plans? Go.
Wow, I mean, it's a really good safety class. I mean, the first thing I think of safety is with that dime spot because that's the immediate need you're going to need to fill in 2019. I think at 52, you have so many talented options. Taylor Rapp, who may fall because of that 4.7 40 time at his pro day. Darnell Savage Jr. is a name that we're going to see a lot in our mocks, and it was in your mock the last time. Jonathan Abram, Juan Thornhill, Deontay Thompson from Alabama, who's kind of had his stock hurt a little bit by not being able to work out with an injury. So ton of names there. Those would be the guys I would talk about, but I definitely been circling Darnell Savage in the mock drafts I've been working on the side.
Yeah, me too. You better circle one that's got interceptions too.
Mm-hmm. And he's got 7 last 2 years.
Let's see. From Andrew Faltz writes in, Hey, David, I just want to say thanks for both you guys and the rest of the depot for all your hard work putting in. You guys easily run the best website on the web, and the amount of work you put in looks very extensive. Keep it. Oh, thanks, Andrew. No question
Thank
there.
You, Andrew.
Just look, with me and all these guys, just the tremendous amount of work these guys put in, especially this time of year. All the draft profiles from Josh Carney and Tom Mead and from Nick and Daniel, just incredible amount of work these guys put in this time of year. And look, we try to keep pushing the envelope too, as far as the things that we do. So I hope everybody enjoys it. Bob Francis writes in, guys, love all the draft talk. Is there any chance Jerry Tillery is a first-round sleeper for the Steelers? PFF has him top 10 player in the class, and as you've discussed, the Steelers might be in best player available mode at pick 20 if the Devons and a few other preferred targets are gone. And this feels early for defensive line, but as Tom wrote in his profile, Tillery could back up all 3 spots and valuable rotation piece to spell the starters. It brings a lot more pass rush ability than a Lulu. How many years left on contracts for Hayward and Tuitt? Maybe Tillery could step in as a starter in a year or two. Look, I mean, I as much as we don't like it, we totally discounted that Virginia Tech pro day last year, right?
I sort of. I had Edmonds in the second round of my mock and 36 overall in my 7-round mock draft. So I mean, I didn't think it was going to happen, but I was higher on Edmonds than I think most people were.
I mean, how shocked would we be if enough guys are off the board that Tillery winds up being the pick?
It'd be pretty surprising, but we've talked about Jerry Tillery before, and I want to make sure we're clear on that we've mentioned him. Now, I think he's a better candidate if he were to fall to 52 because of that labrum surgery he's had that's limited him and hurt his tape last year, and we kind of have a 2 at 2.0. But yeah, I mean, am I going to rule it out entirely? No, I see the value, and it checks some boxes, and I'd throw Rashawn Gary out of Michigan as well if he were to fall. If he slips a little bit, I'd throw his name out there.
Yeah, look, if Colbert and Tomlin are at a pro day, you can't, like O'Menahue, he would have to be the top guy at Texas, right?
Him and Gary Johnson. Yeah.
But Gary Johnson's not going in the first. I mean,
no, but is O'Menahue going in the first?
No, I don't think so. Right. I mean, last year, I mean, neither one of us would have put Edmonds in the first. I'm just saying, if there was a guy at the Texas Pro Day that had the best chance of being in the first, it'd be Omenihu, right?
Yeah, but I have a tough time figuring out where he's going to go because I've heard first to fourth, and I can't get a beat on it.
And when we're talking about Notre Dame, it's not going to be Miles Boykin in the first, right?
No, I mean, if it's a first round ND guy, it'd be Tillery.
All right,
or I guess maybe Julian Love.
So go through each one of these. I mean, there were 8 pro days that Kevin Colbert was at. LSU, it don't take hard to figure out who the two guys are. It's White and Greedy. Those would be your guys there. Alabama, I mean, who's the top rated defensive lineman there?
Williams, but he's going to be long off the board.
Right. I mean, Mac Wilson.
Yeah, say it. Make him twist
say it. This is like the whole Sam Kinison here. Say it. Yeah, I don't want to say it. I hope we're not saying it. Oh Lord. But I mean, Chris, the edge rusher that I did from Alabama. I mean, he can't be in the picture there.
Not in the first round. Mid rounds, Christian Miller possibly.
Right. Clemson.
Thompson. I mean, Deontay Thompson. If you wanted to put him in that first round conversation, I think he's out of it right now. But that's another name to throw out there.
You know, he's a guy too. For some reason, he shows up in the tape, doesn't he?
Yeah. I know the interceptions aren't gaudy, but he makes plays in center field. He's got great range, great angles.
Is he a guy that we're missing here because just choosing to ignore, I guess? I mean, because he shows up a lot on tape.
Mm-hmm. I put him in my others considered when I did my last mock draft, but I think the injury is going to – but, I mean, they were going to draft Rashaan Evans last year, and the injury, let him not test, so maybe.
Let's see. Clemson, we already talked about, I mean, West Virginia, there's no way no way David Long's taken in the first. And no way Sills is taken in the first, right?
As much as you might like it to be.
Oh, boy, I would – you want to talk about running around with the checker flag out the window. I'm not going to let people – if they take Sills in a second, there's going to be some checker flagging running around for sure when it comes to him. But, I mean, you would think that those guys there are going to be later round guys. Yep. Clemson, Cleveland Farrell. I mean, who else? I mean,
you got the linemen, Wilkins and Lawrence.
Right.
Wilkins, I guess, could make more sense. I think Lawrence is a big nose tackle. It's not going to be the best value. Trayvon Mullen is there.
Yeah.
But I'm not taking Mullen at 20.
Who else? Michigan. Obviously, we got Bush. We got Winovich. I mean, like it or not. I mean. Winovich and then Gary, right? I mean, so you got maybe 3 possibilities there, even though Gary's kind of a weird fit, right?
He is, but he's like 6 pounds heavier than Farrell, saying it wrong again. So I mean, it's same concept, same idea. And his 3-cone time was excellent. I mean, the dude ran 4.58 at 277. That's insane.
What other schools are we leaving out here? Oh, Texas A&M. I mean, who would it be there?
Eric McCoy. And if they take a center, then I'm going to wave a white flag, not a checkered flag, and just say I'm done with this. Not going to happen.
That guy's hard not to like, though.
Yeah, just not in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Texas. We already hit on that. That's it, right?
Unless Colbert was at Michigan State, which I still never got confirmation of. But even then, I'm not seeing Justin Lane as the guy at 20.
All right, so there you go, and that kind of plays into what Ryan Ostagai writes in. Hey guys, I'm a long-time listener and love the show. I like to hear these new names come in with questions here. If you have never emailed the show, try put in first-time emailer or something. We'll try to definitely move you up to the top of the list here, and I think Ryan fits that description here. Hi guys, I'm a long-time listener and love the show. I want to know your opinions on a draft. If Bush. This is one of those we're into Tomlin territory here with the what's he say? I don't like to what does Tomlin say? If I'm missing the quote here. Anyway, if Bush, Hawkinson, White, Greedy, and Farrell are all off the board, what's the selection?
Probably Byron Murphy is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I would think I would have to go Murphy there as well too. Let's see, is there anybody else that we're leaving out? That fits the categories there. I mean, I guess Baker or Winovich, but I mean just
Baker.
Yikes! I mean, people get on us for talking about Winovich and then not talking about Winovich. Why you guys want to put Winovich in there? And then when we go a show without talking about Winovich, they're like, why aren't you giving Winovich consideration for being in the first round? You can't win in some of those. That's going to be an interesting choice there, Ryan. I tell you, Bush, Hawkinson, White, Greedy, and Farrell are all off the board. Man, that's a tough one. We'll see if we find out here pretty soon. From A.B. Turner writes in, hello, Dave. I think there's still a chance that Devin Bush will last to pick 20. I'm with you. Look, I've taken criticism all along. I think Bush could be there. If that happens, he would turn the card in. I'm not as high as some about Bush, but I'm okay at 20. If he's gone, I would try to trade out to later in the round and select Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They just have not seemed to show any interest in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson for some reason. He wrote, AB writes in, or Bob Turner writes in that he likes him as a player. In his opinion, this year's top quarterbacks rate less than the top 4 last year. This kind of goes on and on here, but I think we get where you're coming from, Bob, there when it comes to Bush. Let's see, our buddy, I think Kyle wrote in on Twitter and let us know he was going to email us. He did. Best regards from Brazil. First, I'd like to reiterate a big thank you to guys for taking time to read my email. Last time I sent it through, I can't put in words how much I appreciate and how awesome is the attention you guys give to your foreign listeners. Thank you for writing in, Kyle. He writes in, question, given the fact that the Steelers front office is a creature of habits, when narrowing down who could be in the conversation for the first-round pick, and considering Tomlin and Colbert's absent from their pro day, I was not very optimistic about Deandre Baker and Brian Murphy's chances of being under consideration for the 20th overall, but it all changed yesterday when they were brought into the team's facility for a pre-draft visit. How do you guys interpret this visit? Can we now say that both are in consideration for the 20th overall? Can we consider them top options among Mack Wilson if the Devins, Greedy, and Farrell aren't available? Last, can we consider any other names here playing by the front office habits hints? Thank you for your attention, blah, blah, blah. Okay, go. Look, I mean, they brought them in for a reason. Are they bringing them in because they want to get to know them for 4 years from now? Are they seriously consider that either one of these two guys could be the pick? I mean, I think it's yes to all that.
Yeah, no, I think that certainly Murphy and Baker are in play at 20 now. You're not going to discount that just because of the pro day thing. It used to be that a lot of first-round picks would come into Pittsburgh for visits, then they kind of changed the strategy and usually started going to them instead of bringing them to the facility. But because of the conflict with some of the visitations and pro day schedules and all that, you couldn't get to Washington and couldn't get to Georgia, so you're bringing those guys in, and they sent defensive guys out to watch those guys, and I'm sure it brought back some good news on the report there. So yeah, they're absolutely in play. We're flexible. We talk about the pro day stat a lot, but we're not beholden to it, and we can see when things change and when things you can make exceptions and when things make sense. So yeah, short answer, those could still possibly be in play.
I think you could, with the Byron Murphy thing, I think, and if he were to wind up being the pick, I think the argument that you could use with that is, well, Washington's such a far, area to get to, but I mean, they still sent
Terrell Austin.
Terrell Austin. I mean, is it an argument because of distance to not send your GM or head coach?
No, that's dumb because they're not, unless they're doing horse and buggy, they're not. They can get to Washington.
I mean, I'm trying. I guess I'm trying to justify or not justify. Look, at some point they're going to draft a guy that they weren't at a pro day, right?
Yeah, inevitably. I mean, we're not. This isn't 100% guarantee. This is just history, and we're just making our best guess.
I mean, but even so, you would think when you're dealing with an underclassman like that, and the way that Colbert, maybe less so with Baker, because they probably know more about Baker, right? Even though, well, here's the thing with Baker is why did he no show why did he no show the Senior Bowl? That's not going to sit. That didn't set well with a lot of people, right?
Yeah, you always want to see guys compete.
So, obviously you didn't get to talk to him at the Senior Bowl because he no-showed. I wonder how that kind of stuff with players sitting out the bowl games really sits with Tomlin and the Steelers.
Yeah, well, who sat out? Devin Bush sat out, and they like Devin Bush a lot, so I think they're okay with it.
Fant sat out too, right?
Did he? Okay, well, I don't know exactly. I guess they have some interest in Fant.
I think now that's becoming the new norm, right?
Yeah, if I'm an NFL team, I don't care about that stuff. I mean, it doesn't affect me at all. The reason why, and if you want to play devil's advocate, and this is a legitimate reason, the Steelers weren't at the Washington Pro Day, at least Colbert Tomlin weren't there, is because they had pre-draft visitors in that day. It was April 1st. They brought in Damian Harris, Andy Isabella, Dylan Mitchell, so they had stuff to do at the facility is the reason why they didn't go to Washington that day. That makes more sense than travel.
Yeah, but if I'm going to invest a first-round draft pick that I think I got a shot at getting, I'm going out to that pro day, even though he's he's just going to run around and do a couple of defensive back drills.
Well, I'm not even sure if he did drills. I'll have to look at that. I want to say they didn't, and that's why you bring him in for a visit. You say, okay, we can't go out there, so let's bring him in for a visit instead, and that's how we'll check that box.
Some way we'll have a way to go, yeah, but right.
Yeah, we're just giving our best guess. Let me double check to see if Murphy worked out at his pro day. I want to say that he didn't.
People are just waiting for one of these things not to happen so they can say, yeah, you guys put way too much stock into that.
Right.
But look, we're not. We're just trying to point out the kind of the obvious things because, look, we don't know who they're going to draft, right, Alex?
Of course not. But I think we've been fairly successful predicting this stuff in the past. I mean, I had Edmonds in my mock last year. I had TJ Watt the year before. I talked about Bud Dupree a couple of years ago that he was going to be the guy if he fell. So I think we have a decent track record at it.
Right. I mean, we're both fairly confident. We know the wide receiver, one of the two wide receivers, is going to get drafted this year. Right. All right.
Real quick, Murphy did not participate in position drills. I don't think he did any testing. So he didn't do much at his pro day workout either, which is more reason, I guess, not to go and bring him in instead.
All right, David Weiss writes in, it seems doubtful that Devin Bush will be available at 20 and trading up for him. If Devin Bush falls to 20, I'm not going to let you people forget about this. He will be the new David DeCastro if he falls here. Look, I understand. I get why. But anyway, let's read on. Devin Bush will be available at 20 and trading for him would simply cost too much. Instead of moving up in the first and giving the requisite picks, I'm curious what thoughts are on taking what is available at 20 and moving up to the beginning of the second round. It would take significantly less capital to move to the late 30s, early 40s, and there'll be several players they could use, i.e. Chase, Tinsel, Winovich. I guess Tinsel's going to stick with if Winovich becomes a Steeler somehow, we're going to nickname him Tinsel.
And he'll be very confused.
Yeah, exactly.
He will not know what's going on.
This would allow us to get someone like A.J. Brown or a cornerback safety in the first. Regards, Dave Weiss. Look, I just can't see going back that much in the first round. And I mean, if they're going up for anybody, it's gonna be Bush. One would think, and to go up, I'm talking maybe 3-4 spots at max there. So, I mean, I get the whole he's not going to be there, but I got a funny feeling that the Steelers think that he's going to be there.
I don't rule it out. And I think he was wasn't he talking about trading up from 52 to go into the 30s? Isn't that what he was referring to?
Let's see. I'm
curious. Less so than trading down in the first.
Instead of moving up in the first and giving up the requisite picks, I'm curious what your thoughts are on taking what is available. Okay, he's taking available at 20 and moving up to the beginning of the second round. It would take. Okay, so he's saying to move up at the beginning of the second round.
Which is possible, but I mean, you could justify that for any round, and I'm not sure exactly who your guy's going to be. I mean, it could be Winovich, but it could be other guys. I will say this, though. I mean, I agree that trying to trade up a ton for, like, let's say Devin Bush is going to be tough to do, but I'm looking at Colbert's trade history now. When he traded up for Troy in 03, they went from 27 to 16, so that's, 11 spots. And then with Santonio Holmes, I think they traded up, 7 spots? 32 to 25, I think.
It all depends on what teams.
Yeah, it all depends.
Want
so I mean,
return.
I think they could go up 5 to 6 to 7 possibly. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to go up 15, but history says they go up about 7 to 10 spots.
But once again, I don't think they're going to give up their second to do it.
Right, but they didn't. I mean, things changed. They didn't give up their second before.
Right.
Trade up for Holmes or
right. And Kevin Colbert has said there is no trade chart. It's all what people will take. But what people will take they would have to me. My guess is that Kevin Colbert's not going to come off that second.
No, yeah, throw the second out there, but could it be a third and a fourth? That's what they did in '06 for Troy.
Yeah,
They traded 32 and 96.
I think all everything's on the table after that.
Okay. I do think that trading a third could let you go up more than just say 3 spots that you mentioned. I think you could go up potentially 5 to 6 if you trade, let's say 66 in that fourth in your first to get up to.
Yeah,
15.
but as far as us trying to predict what the actual picture would
sure.
be, I mean, we can pull out the trade chart like everybody else, but I mean, it's all what somebody's willing to take, you know.
Yeah, but I'm just saying I think they could go higher than 3 to 5 spots because history says that they have, and they will.
All right, Garrett Goldberg writes in, "Hey guys, I've been loving the podcast and reading all the draft profiles lately. One thing I found crazy is how far Ja'Kai Polite has seemingly fallen since the beginning of the draft process. I'm wondering if too much stock is being placed in his testing numbers, and we are starting to forget some really nice things that he showed on tape. Even with all the poor testing numbers and interviews, do you still like Polite as a prospect, and what round do you consider taking him in, if at all at this point? Thanks, guys. Hope maybe you hear the question on the podcast at some point." Okay, Garrett, look, here's where I have Polite right now. When it comes to the Steelers, in order for them to draft him, they're going to have to bring him in for a visit. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
This has to be one of those. I don't want to say Mike Adams situations or whatnot, but it is. You know, he's got enough questions there that I want to bring him in. And you know, if I'm Ja'Kai Polite, I'm following that Mike Adams playbook. I'll drive. I'll spend my own dime. Bring me in. I want to talk to you. Send a letter to all 32 teams. That's what I'm doing in this process. If I'm Ja'Kai Polite, I thought his interview with Kim Jones at his was it at his pro day? Yeah, it was at his pro day. And I don't think enough people saw it. Maybe NFL teams saw it. This guy, I think it all hit this kid. That heck, this thing isn't as easy as maybe as I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And I've made a lot of mistakes during this draft process here. But you're right, Garrett. The tape is the tape when it comes to Ja'Kai Polite. But you can't discount the other stuff that has happened in this process with him. I still like him as a player, yes. Is he a first-round guy? Absolutely not. Is he a second-round guy? Probably not. But if you want to talk about a team like the Steelers, if they bring him, if he's one of these pre-draft visitors here at the end of this thing here, he might be a guy you have to consider and play in, say, the third round. Am I right, Alex? But he has to come in. To me, he has to come in for a visit at this point.
100% agree. He's got to come in. And you look at his teammate, Jordan Scarlett. You know, why did Jordan Scarlett, the running back from Florida, come in for a visit? Well, obviously they went on his pro day. They had Rick Caprice, but they didn't have Colbert Tomlin, so you want to look at him. But Scarlett has character issues. Got popped for marijuana, I think, early in his college career. Then he got charged with the credit card fraud and got suspended for an entire season because of it. So you got to bring this guy in. You got to talk to him. You got to figure out what happened. You got a lot of questions to answer. Now, Polite's situation isn't, that side of it, but he's got concern. He's got issues, and you got to talk to him. So if they bring him in, he's in play. If they don't bring him in, though, you can probably safely say he's off their board.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they drafted him without bringing him in because they weren't surprisingly they weren't at that pro day. Had they been at that pro day, maybe
right.
Maybe. But and look, that's one name I'm looking for here, maybe in this last bunch, because I mean they're probably looking for an edge rusher. And if you want a guy, maybe you could steal in the third or fourth round here and not have a lot invested with him. But I think you have to bring him in. So, Garrett, no, I don't think Alex and I are down on him. I think all along I've been a little bit higher on Ja'Kai Polite than Alex has been.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I think if you want him to be a Steeler, he has to come in for a pre-draft visit here. It's a good question, Garrett. I mean, because look, this is a guy that I had right off the bat. One of the early guys that I watched tape on, and I liked him. But it's hard to get through the pre-draft process without thinking, oh, man, if there's a guy that had a horrible pre-draft process, it's him.
Yeah, but like I said before, this wasn't the off-the-field stuff, but Orlando Brown, the tackle last year from Oklahoma, had one of the worst pre-draft workouts ever. Everybody said this guy's not going to make it. Dude's going to be a stud right tackle for the Ravens. So, the poor pre-draft process doesn't always translate.
Richard Hudspeth writes in. He writes in something we've already answered. Can we delve? Can we derive anything from the Steelers signing a certain positions from the AAF players, as in signing alignments so they don't have to go there during a draft? Absolutely not. These guys are just position holders right now. If they can upgrade any position via the draft, they're probably not going to waste any time doing so. Right?
Yep. No bearing on draft plans.
I think we've gotten
That
through. Let's see. Eric Coakley writes in. Does my bookie have odds on Shazier ever playing again? What odds would you take? Yeah, Eric. I don't even want to kind of touch that. Do you know if after injury like his, can muscles ever get the same strength and speed? I'm not even going to pretend to try to answer that. Ask Melanie Friedlander at Girl Surgeon on Twitter. Look, she is. If anybody's been in Ryan Shazier's corner, it's hers, and she's she knows all about that kind of stuff there. And look, the guy has probably made triple the progress that people thought he would have made after having that spinal surgery at this point. So I don't know if my bookie has odds on that. I haven't looked. I think that would be kind of.
It'd be very inappropriate. I'm not going to comment about odds.
Yeah.
But I'm rooting for him. I think he could play again. I think it's what he wants to do. I'm not going to be the one that tells him no, because you look at this progress, man. You wonder, look at where he's at now. Is he going to be at a year from now?
All right, we ran a little bit long. Surprise, surprise.
We'll do that Friday with Dave T.
I've already told Dave we're going to have him on for about an hour. So, look, I hope you enjoy these longer ones. I'll try to rate. Maybe Alex will do a better job of reining me in here in the future here. But in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kazora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. We try to get as many listeners involved with this thing as well, too. And that's why these shows run a little bit longer, because we want to make sure we acknowledge the listeners' role in this show and asking these questions and all. So keep those things coming in. If you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit that donate button. If you want an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, hit SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. Don't forget, Dave T is scheduled to be on Friday's show. And until then, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.